This morning, we've gone through a bit of a journey understanding how to build a data team, thinking about the totality of data, and then buzzwords. But now what we want to do is take a bit of a turn and think about how we secure that data that we've been learning about all morning. To help us do that, we have Dan Wagner, who is the founder and CEO of Civis. Dan, take it away.
All right, thank you so much for having me. My name's Dan Wagner, and I'm the CEO of Civis. I want to start this out with a light disclaimer, which is I'm not a data security engineer or a security professional, but I do lead an organization that's obsessed with data security for our customers. And I want to talk to you about our journey from the perspective as a general person, learning a lot of this from scratch and provide you some of the key lessons that I've learned along the way to become a security-centric organization. We have a rich 7-year history working across government organizations to help them use our data science technology and new methods to help them make better decisions for any number of use cases, from disaster management to COVID relief to even helping transportation systems be optimized. And it's gotten harder in a lot of ways. You're understaffed, workload is increasing, and data security challenges are growing every day. Our goal is to make sure that we're a partner for our customers, making their most important decisions with the right security, feature investments, and the personnel to make our customers successful across so many cases with the right security investment and point of view. Our data security journey has been a long one, especially to FedRAMP, which is a new certification representing some of the most important best practices in government security. But our journey has really been incremental, and that's how it should be. We began with really strong internal controls, moved to SOC 2 and HIPAA, got to FedRAMP, but we did all of these using really incremental incremental steps, and we're not finished yet. We're going to keep going. And today I want to highlight exactly how that journey worked and what are some of the most important investments for you and other organizations to make. So what's the context? Things are getting bad out there. There are nation state actors looking to compromise state and local governments, the federal government. They're not just going after agencies, they're going after vendors that are supporting those agencies. They're not just going after a small range of private organizations, they're going against utilities, other organizations that are supporting citizens and governments with services. And this is being supported by all types of outside actors who are really professionals or quasi-business organizations looking to optimize their revenue through ransomware. And it really sets the context for how we as vendors or how we as governments need to put in practices to protect ourselves. But why do these bad things keep happening? Unfortunately, non-security people can have somewhat of a blasé attitude towards security because it can create kind of an ongoing, yeah, I hear you kind of background noise. There are lots of buzzword terms in security, weird acronyms, et cetera. And in a lot of cases, when you look at who's been hacked, it's been due to practices of laziness or ignorance that's really caused it. And that's a big reason why a lot of these organizations are being compromised. People tend to underestimate the risk of low probability but high impact, high risk events. But these events are becoming more common every day. The actors are becoming more disciplined, the damage is going up. So that risk calculus between the size of the damage of the event and probability of those events really need to change, which changes the nature of the features and the training and other internal investments we need to make. As a non-security person, but one who's obsessed with security, we see two primary risk areas on two sides. You have the staff and you have the stack. These are the two most important attack vectors, and those are the places where you and other organizations need to place your investment. I'll start with the staff, which is the most important vector that outside actors are going through and where you as an organization need to place your data security investment. So let's start with this. What do outside attackers want from your staff? They want your passwords, and they want those passwords to get into your systems. When we look at our staff and we think about how we set our own resources, outside attackers are looking at your LinkedIn profiles to see who's on the data team, who's on the executive team, who else might have access to figure out who might be some of those primary targets. IT teams are probably less, given some of the internal discipline that they have, but who's an executive who has a lot of major access to information, or a data team that has a lot of principal access to data that these folks are trying to get. In these cases, phishing attacks are going to come through any number of places. A phishing attack is, again, when an outside actor emails, texts, sends a social media invite, et cetera, with the purpose of gaining your access to your passwords nefariously and then using that to break into your system. Increasingly, a lot of these attacks from what we're seeing are not just coming through these lousy texts, lousy emails, but coming over social media channels such as Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And it only takes one breach from one employee in an organization that could be hundreds of employees to bring down an entire organization. In this case, an entire pipeline that was brought down because an employee negligently handed over their password to an attacker who's able to get principal control over their systems and bring it down in a major way, causing millions of dollars in damage, backup and supply chain over the course of days, huge investment, huge amounts of remediation that they had to go through simply because they didn't have the appropriate measures, staffing, training, et cetera, to make sure that they were protected. So what are some of the investments that we've done and that you can do? There's a lot of investments, but three really important ones that aren't talked about that we think are really important to do. First is that the spread or the kind of overlap between people's personal lives and their work lives online are essentially overlapping. And a lot of organizations put heavy investment into their infrastructure, into making that people's email accounts, et cetera, are secure. But again, often employees have the same computer, they have the same devices, and social media is becoming an important attack vector through people's personal profiles. Think Facebook, through LinkedIn, and we've seen this another time at our organization. As a result, IT professionals, security professionals need to think about how they can extend their security permissioning and standards to people's social media and personal accounts, not just their business accounts. Second, I'll talk about this next, is to simulate internal phishing attacks. It's important that you train your staff. It's also important that you have functionally an exam to make sure that these people can get phished in a simulated way, but not mess up in a way where they hand over their permissions to an outside attacker. Third is access control management. Identity management, something like Okta, is really important. But second is maintaining a principle of what we call least privilege. Least privilege means that your employees only get access to the information and the data that they need and nothing more. Very regularly at Civis, and this isn't just part of our controls, but something that we do as kind of best practice, we look across the company to ask ourselves what employees have access to what data. That could be internal data, that could be HR data, that could be customer data. And we ask ourselves, what information do they need? And do they have anything that they actually don't need as part of their jobs? And if they do, we cut it down, we cut it down, we cut it down. This is an important practice, obviously, as a vendor to make sure that we're doing well by our customers. But in the case of a customer, if something bad happens and permissions are accessed, making sure that an internal person can't give more information to an outside attacker, heaven forbid. We train a lot, and we do it through two means. One is just making sure that people have access to constant instruction. There's a lot of vendors out there that provide good programs. KnowBe4, Proofpoint Wombat are two examples, just to help your staff keep abreast of what are some of these major forms of attack and how they protect your organization against phishing attacks and other things. The second is something that we've started to do that's really, really important, is running our own phishing tests against our own teams. Most of the phishing attacks that you're going to get are going to be lousy. They're going to have bad English. You're going to be able to see the URL from it. It's going to be pretty clear that it's something lousy. And they're looking for just that one person at 10,000 that's going to click on the link who's going to show some vulnerability. But the quality of those attacks is really, really growing over time. And you want to look at what some of those things are that they're going to come into your organization, because often the best attacks are going to get the most amount of information. In this case, this is an attack that we worked on that simulated from our vendor. And there's three primary pieces to that. First is that it looked really official. It was from Slack. That's something that we use every day. The logo was great. The typeface was matched. The second is that it had really powerful emotional manipulation. This is an HR incident review. So an average employee would look at that and say, oh my God, wow, this is something really important. And third is it had a label that says already shared. So it provided this kind of messaging as this is something that was highly normalized. It looked official, matched typeface, included heavy emotional manipulation by saying that it was from an HR internal review and saying that it was already shared. All this was fake. If you looked at the sender URL, you could tell that it was fake. However, for you as an average person who's super busy, it looked like it was official. This is the type of phishing attacks that people are using to get into major vendors, get into major agencies. Increasingly, that's being provided either by people who are looking to install ransomware or major nation state actors that are looking to compromise your systems to get into important government agencies, or the vendors that serve them to get the data that they want. So talk about the first part. First place of investment is the staff and some of the 3 investments that we put together. The next is the stack, your underlying hardware and your underlying code. SolarWinds was the biggest one. And in this case, they were able to access a patch that SolarWinds was providing, or rather a new piece of software. They got into it, they had a Trojan horse that went into it, and as a result, they were able to access the production software, make an important change, and get into the actual production databases for a number of large agencies. Completely terrifying. So they were able to get this backdoor to access actual citizen data for the United States government and a number of different agencies. This is the worst case scenario. So what can you do? There's a few things, and I'll talk about it. Access control. When a vendor says, provide me with administrator privileges, you're going to see this access from security vendors. You might want to say whether or not they actually need that. And if they don't, push back. Second is annual review to ensure that your vendors are operating with these different checklists to make sure that they're not installing patches that might be compromised, et cetera. So what are the big things? We've put in place a number of really important investments to ensure that our stack is extremely secure, that everyone else, whether that's a vendor or an agency that is pursuing, and most importantly, as an agency, that you're asking your vendors are following these processes every single day. And these are 3 of the biggest ones: source code processes, continuous threat and vulnerability management, and security governance. Source code human process is don't be SolarWinds. Don't get compromised by SolarWinds. We do line-by-line code review to ensure that nobody is building a backdoor through a phishing attack or a patch that wasn't updated. Highly tedious, a lot of work, but when something is about to be deployed, making sure that you're literally reading every line, often through peer review, to making sure that there's nothing going into a deployment that's going to compromise your system. Second is continuous threat and vulnerability. You can't let the last line be people. You need to put in place controls and ultimately software for network scanning, problem identification, and remediation. There's a number of common vendors for this: Qualsys, Rapid7, Tenable, et cetera. Third is security governance. The government agencies, a number of nonprofits, have put together really good security frameworks, which essentially operate as checklists to help you as an organization put in place the right practices to secure your data and to secure your stack. The biggest ones are SOC 2, NIST, FedRAMP, et cetera. You may not decide to actually pursue a formal audit, a formal certification, but these operate as really important checklists that either an agency or a vendor can pursue. And if you're a government agency and you're partnering with a vendor, you can use this as an opportunity. Maybe they're not pursuing a certification that they absolutely need, but you can use that as a framework and a checklist to make sure that they're acting right by you. So I've talked about these 2 important areas of data security. Again, I'm not a security professional, but Civis is a security obsessed organization. And there are these 2 areas of investment: your staff and your stack. People are your primary target and your most important investment. Again, work and life are overlapping. Lock down their social accounts, not just their business accounts. Train and train, even with these types of high quality phishing attacks that are starting to look more and more real based on what nation state actors, these quasi businesses seeking to install ransomware, et cetera, are starting to provide. Policy of least privilege: only give access to your staff or outside vendors the information that they need. System improvements like Okta, but also data administration. Civis provides access control features through our platform, but you as an administrator, you as an agency, need to audit exactly what data people have access to and making sure that you're reducing it only to that which is in the scope of their job. This can be tedious, but something that's critically important for your protection. The stack is next. Manual code review of your source code to ensure there's no backdoor. Constantly patching if you're using open source packages like most people are. Don't assume that people are going to be your last line of defense. Get a vulnerability scanner and a remediation path if, God forbid, something bad does happen. And then finally, start to introduce these instruction manuals. They are highly useful, even if you're not moving through a formal audit or a formal certification. SOC 2 being a great start of an instruction manual for you and your security team to start implement. So be safe out there. These are the investments that will really help you stay protected as the world becomes more dangerous. But you can make these investments. We've made them as a security obsessed organization to help our customers. And that's it. So thank you very much.